Hello and welcome to this discussion with Business Today. As you know, we've been taking stock of the India government's first year in power, and we are looking at various sectors. So in this edition, we'll be looking at the economy. And while the economy hasn't really improved as much as one would have liked it to, fact is that it's going to take much longer for anybody to really turn it around. Given the situation, the government has done a fair job, and there are certain good indicators, such as, of course, in some part luck also has played its part, like the global price of crude oil has fallen, then inflation of course has fallen. Whether GDP growth has grown or not is a matter of debate, because some people say that when you change the base year, you're just changing the calculations completely. But still, the GDP numbers are looking better, projections are better. United Nations is saying that we will probably overtake China in terms of the growth rate of GDP in this fiscal. So, but there are challenges, there are issues. The stock market is being very volatile, especially because of tax issues related to FIIs, and nobody is really sure how much of reform has really happened and how much more needs to be done. So these are all very important issues, and I have with me today Rajiv Dubey, who is the managing editor of Business Today, and Shweta Punj, senior associate editor, and we'll discuss with them the economic situation and what the government has achieved so far and what are the challenges going ahead. So Rajiv, maybe we could start with you. If you could just tell us, what expectations you had when the government came to power, and do you think it has met your expectations?
So I think if you look at the broad economic scenario, at that point in time they were looking at far better economic growth. They were looking at some of the infrastructure and other promises that the then Prime Minister Modi made when he came to power, was about power to all and power 24/7, was about roads and better road infrastructure, what was about better airports and water supply and things like that. So all of those things, I think the building blocks in this 1 year for many of those things are being put in place. One of the big things that he talked about was the confidence of the industry, and how the industry should be confident about investing in the country, foreigners as well as Indians. So I think the building blocks for many of those things have, I think, been put in place and are being put in place. Whether you look at the Labour Act, whether you look at some of the announcements that they've made on roads and infrastructure, some of the announcements that they've made on their plans for river interlinking, some of the announcements that they've made about Land Acquisition Act and what they want to do with the Land Acquisition Act, and it has its own problems. Some of the announcements they've made about FDI and making people and making foreign investors more comfortable about investing in India. I think from all the bankers, the corporate executives, the senior CFOs and CEOs that we are talking to, it seems that people are willing to give them another till the middle of the term to decide whether this government is working or not working, whether what they want to do is going to have an effect or not. So I think 1 year is a very good time frame to assess them, but it's not a good enough time frame to decide whether you think that the government's intentions are going to translate into real action on the ground.
And Shweta, you've been visiting the ministries and talking to bureaucrats and ministers and a lot of other people outside the government as well. So what is your sense of what the government has done so far and what more it could have done?
So Alokesh, it's interesting that we're evaluating this government after a year, and primarily because this government came on a very high expectation platform. So the expectations were also very high, and the perception was that this is the government that's really going to fix everything very quickly. And especially the last 2 years of UPA, there was a lot of disenchantment with the government, with India. Investors were very wary. So the expectation was that tax reforms would be unleashed, tax terrorism, a term coined by the BJP-led NDA, would come to an end. 1 year later, that has not changed. Investors are as wary as they were before, even more so now because of the MAT controversy. That's gone down very badly with the international investor community. There is a sense that the finance ministry is not working in coordination, because a couple of events that have happened, like the release of income tax forms, and after that the finance minister came out and said that okay, we will release simpler forms. These things don't just happen like that. It should have been a better coordinated action. So that's missing. So a cohesive agenda coming out of the finance ministry seems to be missing at the moment. So while overall we have seen that yes, a lot of work has been driven by the Prime Minister himself. You have a PMO that's closely monitoring a lot of things. You have a very strong economic diplomacy agenda being pursued. But two key things, that is ease of doing business, one, and tax terrorism, as in to get more transparency in our tax laws. These two things have largely gone unaddressed. Yes, first tentative steps have been taken to address it. You have a very publicized Make in India campaign, and if you speak with the officials driving this campaign, they will list out a list of things that have been communicated to the state governments, and with their targets and timelines and so on and so forth. But when you speak to businesses on ground, small and medium-sized businesses, they will tell you that they're still fighting the same battles that they were fighting earlier. So while there is a lot of good positivity on top, it's not translated into real action on ground where ease of doing business is concerned. Then agricultural sector that remains largely ignored. And we are actually in a crisis mode at the moment, because we don't know how the monsoon is going to be. We've had erratic rains, we've had farmer suicides, and there was a lot of expectation that this government will do something to restructure the Food Corporation of India. We will see a more definitive plan towards that, but the Agriculture Ministry's performance has been very lackluster, if you ask me. And education also, I think it's been in the news for all the wrong reasons than the right reasons. So a year later, yes, optimism is still there, but it's more driven on the basis of hope than anything concrete, than concrete actions on ground.
Right. So Rajiv, you have studied and examined and analyzed other economies beyond India. So this ease of doing business is something that even the Prime Minister himself has been saying right from the beginning, that he wants to improve India's ranking in the ease of doing business index and all that. So what do you think really is needed? Is the single window clearance that is being discussed, is that good enough, or what is the enabler?
So one of the big issues that they are struggling with right now is the land acquisition bill, and it is one of the major initiatives on the path to ease of doing business, which is making sure that when an industry wants to acquire land, especially manufacturing, and since Make in India is such a major initiative that this government has launched, one of the things that they are banking on is that the land acquisition bill does pass through. There are many other initiatives on ease of doing business. One is what Shweta talked about, is of course the personal tax front, but the similar issues exist in corporate taxation, in import and export regulations, and in paperwork that goes into import and export regulations, in reducing the bureaucratic wrangle and bureaucratic stranglehold around the companies and corporates, and what discretion that they have or they exercise over what companies do on a daily basis. Labor Acts, the four related labor acts that the government wants to do is part of the ease of doing business initiative. So all of these put together, when if they do come into effect, GST, for instance, again another major initiative to bring about greater transparency and greater uniformity and more accountability in the taxation system. So I think all of these put together are so you can see that what the government is trying to do are all aimed at one objective, one agenda. Not all of that is working. Land acquisition bill, considering that Congress, the main opposition, has taken a public stand on this. I don't know how that bill is going to pass. As far as I know, the land acquisition ordinance has already, this is the third time that they've promulgated this. I think there is a restriction on how many times you can repromulgate. I think 5 or 6 times at best. So I don't know how this government is going to take through that this is the biggest reform that they are hoping to, apart from GST.
Which is being touted or criticized, criticized as pro-business, and so this is leading to a lot of...
So that is another issue, but I think all that they are doing are all aimed at, improving the ease of doing it.
I'd like to just add to Rajiv's point on GST. Again, a big reform, and having it pass through Lok Sabha, it's considered like a political feat of sorts. But if you look at GST and the contents of it, if you look at the tax rate that's being proposed of 27%, that's very, very impractical. And any tax expert you talk to will tell you that if you do roll out GST in its current form with its 4 or 5 exemptions, which includes alcohol, it includes tobacco, it includes oil and gas, petroleum, it includes electricity, it includes real estate. If you do pass it in this current form with these exemptions, so then the expectation that passing of GST would actually add 1% to the GDP, it negates that completely. If you pass it in the current form, it negates that. Then with a 27% tax rate, you're going to have massive compliance issues, which would mean that the tax authorities are going to probably use like draconian administrative ways to get people to pay tax or get businesses to pay tax, because at such a high tax rate, it's going to be a compliance nightmare. So yes, great, you've gotten it passed through the Lok Sabha, but is it really as big a reform as it's being touted as? I'm not so sure about that.
So I think even the finance minister has been publicly quoted as saying that it's not going to be 27%, he has claimed. Yeah. But I don't know now that it is passed through.
But even what they are considering and privately talking about 22-23%, even that's too high a taxation rate. If you look at any developed country, in Europe, or I think UK has 17%. Anywhere in the world, GST rate doesn't exceed, is in the range of 6 to 15%. Some countries have another 2%, some cess is added and all that. So 16-17% is the maximum acceptable rate of a central GST anywhere in the world. 27% is just a crazy amount.
So I think in the first 1 year, if you were to look at the key achievements, I don't know, Rajiv, if you will disagree with me, but I think it's probably all the foreign visits that have been made and the aggressive agenda, so-called economic diplomacy agenda, changing India's perception in the world. That I would say has been their #1 achievement, and restoring macro posture. How much of that can be attributed to the policies that the government has followed, that is highly debatable. You have inflation that's come down, you have fiscal deficit that's under control, you have current account deficit that's under control, but a lot of it is being attributed to the fall in oil prices. If that wouldn't have happened, it would have been difficult.
Right. So the perception of India improving is also largely a doing of the Prime Minister's visits to all these countries.
Absolutely, and he's taken a very aggressive stand.
And he has made a lot of points there, but many of those points have not translated into real action on the ground over here. So there are still some challenges ahead. I think infrastructure has also been, moving on to another subject, infrastructure has been, you touched upon it, Rajiv, in your initial notes. But infrastructure has been another one of the big planks of this government, that like even in the previous NDA government when the Golden Quadrilateral was built and several others. I think the Delhi, there's a freight corridor that is being built. There are several other infrastructure plans like the smart cities, the 100 smart cities. So of what has been done so far in this 1 year, infrastructure obviously has a long gestation projects and they take a long time. But are you happy with what has happened in the first year so far in infra, and what all are lacking?
So I think if you look at the roads, I think it was the easiest and the fastest that the government thought it would be able to, kick off. and I can vouch for the fact that some of the road projects, especially the ones that were stalled under the NDA regime, have started moving, and they are moving pretty fast. And I can tell you, under the UPA regime. And I think one of them is the Delhi Jaipur highway, and I go there often. I can tell you that you know, from Manesar onwards and Gurgaon onwards, there is significant progress on the Delhi Jaipur highway in terms of completion of that project. I mean, it's something that's been stalled for a good, it's been going on for a good 10 years or so. So, you know, the first thing that the government wanted to do was to kickstart the stalled projects. And I assume that if it has started working here, I'm sure that some of the other projects which were stalled, including some in Punjab and many other parts of the country, I think they've started work on that, and they must be progressing. But as far as new roads and new greenfield roads are concerned, which is where the real growth will come from, you know, it's the biggest factor in development of underdeveloped areas. And so new roads and greenfield roads, I don't think there's much work that has happened, although which is linked to land acquisition, of course. So I think that as far as roads is concerned, that is where it is. River linking projects, very little work, 130 odd crore. I don't think it can get you anywhere near linking the rivers of the country. But there's some project work that is going on. They are identifying which rivers to link and all. That's a starting point. I don't know if there's any other. There's some work in infrastructure, in power as far as infrastructure is concerned. But then power projects are all stalled unless power purchase agreements are reworked, and unless the discoms are in better financial position. I don't think power sector can per se you know, hope to kickstart new projects. New power plants have not been planned for anything beyond 2017 or some 2020. I think beyond that there are no new power plants being planned as of today. So power is stuck. I don't know if there are any other areas where things have highways, roads and.
But the good thing, the silver lining seems to be that there seems to be a plan, like Bharatmala, equivalent to a golden quadrilateral.
There's an intention to do so.
There is an intention, there's a vision. They've allotted, they have in terms of they're planning to, in fact in 2014, 2015, they I think tendered projects about 8,000 kilometers, which is nearly double of what happened the year before. So and they've set a very ambitious target of I think I don't remember the exact number, but a certain number of kilometers a day is what they want to do, and it's a very ambitious target that they have kept for themselves, and they're confident that they will be able to achieve it. So there seems to be a plan, there seems to be a vision coming out of the roads and
And what about economic reforms? I think a lot of people expected that this particular year's budget would be a big bang budget like the 1991 signature budget, and it would change a lot of things, but none of that really happened.
So clearly they could have been bold in their first year. First 2 years are probably the best time to make bold moves, but they have clearly taken a very gradual, incremental approach towards economic policy. And so far, to be honest with you, I'm not clear about what is the vision of the economic vision of this government, because on one hand you have issues like tax terrorism, then you have a lot of talk and a lot of focus on a lot of social security schemes, social safety net. So then of course that's equally important. So then one wonders that we were expecting something radically different. That is something that we are not seeing in this government. It's more of the same thing. But yes, there is effort being made to reduce corruption, which is a huge positive.
And okay, so looking ahead in the next 1 year, what would be the three, in your view, what would be the top three priority areas for the government?
In my view, I think the GST will be the biggest initiative as far as kicking off growth is concerned. Second would be the infrastructure projects. investment in infrastructure, considering that consumption side of the economy is not taking off. It is the investment side of the economy that has to start the growth process. The growth process is not starting with the consumption economy because people are not sure about their future. So the consumption, and the investment side of the economy will only start when the government starts investing in infrastructure. So that is number 2. And I think reforms as far as manufacturing in the country are concerned, whether it is labor acts or whether it is land acquisition. If these 3 things come into play, I think there will be some progress, but I don't see how a land acquisition bill is going to be passed in the deadlock that the government and the key opposition parties have got themselves into, without any of them publicly stepping off, and which means a huge loss of face. So I think that's the biggest hurdle to that. But I think if these 3 things are put in place, there should be some progress on the economic front.
Well, I would hope to see some a more clear and a more definitive policy towards taxation, instead of conflicting voices coming from the finance ministry. We would really like to see a very cohesive, coherent response to that, whether it's retrospective taxation, whether it's simplification of filing your taxes. There needs to be a semblance of sanity in that policy. It's a very, very important policy which the government cannot take very lightly. Then I would hope that the government actually gets down to implementing. We've heard there's been a lot of talk. Now we would like, I would like, or businesses would like to see that action is translated on ground. So you have a massive communication campaign where you engage your bureaucrat at the grassroots level, who's actually implementing or has the responsibility of carrying out the reforms that you're proposing.
Right. So thanks, Rajiv. Thanks, Shweta. That's quite a lot of thoughts, and the fact is that the government has moved on various fronts, probably not moved enough. But the fact is also that there seems to be good intent, and a lot of times good intent is just the beginning of better things, and hopefully we will see that अच्छे दिन soon enough. Thank you very much.